Welcome, 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 all you lovers of horror, sci-fi, and fantasy. It's time yet again for another thrilling, exciting installment of, you guessed it, Fear and Fascination, Horror, Sci-Fi, and Fantasy Unleashed. Coming at you live every Saturday night at 4 p.m. Pacific Time. That's 7 p.m. Eastern Time on right here on Get Real Global TV and Get Real Global Radio KGRL. You can watch us live on our YouTube channel, Get Real Global TV. And you can also check us out on our Get Real Global TV on Twitch and TikTok. And then check out our Linktree page to see all of our social media and website links. You just type in at Jennifer DeVoe Muse. That's JenniferDevoemuse. And you can check out our radio station, Get Real Global Radio KGRL on Spreaker. We're also syndicated on iHeartRadio, Spotify, YouTube Music, TuneIn, Amazon Music, Audible, Apple Podcasts, plus pretty much everywhere else you can watch or listen to podcasts. We're distributed by Sony Music Entertainment, Sony Music Publishing, The Orchard by Sony, and 50/50 Global Music Incorporated. I'm your hostess with the mostest, Jennifer DeVoe Muse, and we would like to say hello to everyone watching or listening to this broadcast around the world. And, normally we would say hello to the sultry songstress Amy Bowman, but she is doing live concert coverage for us tonight at Korn. She's going to see Korn tonight. So she's doing concert coverage for us for our other podcast, Wicked Entertaining. So she'll be out this evening. But and the Mac Daddy of Metal, he had a medical thing he had to do. So we're gonna say goodnight for him. But let's introduce the lovely daughter. My other co-host, Samantha Bailey. Woo!
Happy Saturday, y'all.
Happy Saturday. How's it going?
Very well.
You workaholic, you?
Yes, I am a workaholic. 24/7 grind.
Yeah, you're just like me. Chip off the old block, I tell you.
Yes.
Wish they were all like that. So, we've had a pretty good week so far, and we're just going to continue on having a good week. But we have a really great guest tonight. He is Lee Lindauer, and he's the author of The Salvation of Henry Maxwell. And so I'm very excited about this. Ooh, I like this. It's where we enter the world of an aging Hollywood horror actor as he learns that his wife's death years ago may have been murder. I'm very excited to know more about this one.
Yes.
How about you? Yes, right?
Very much. I know. I was checking him out, and it looks like he's got a couple other books.
Oh yeah, we're gonna talk about that stuff too.
Yes. Very excited.
I'm very excited. And it's Mr. Lee Lindauer on the show. How are you today, sir?
I'm just doing fine. How are you folks doing?
That's very
Looks like
good.
You're having fun already.
Yes.
Well, we're trying. we're trying, most definitely.
We're always having fun.
Too much fun to speak of. Okay, so I was telling everybody a little bit about you. I mean, you're an author. We know that. And how many books have you written in total so far?
Well, probably about 6, but writers don't get everything out there.
Okay, gotcha.
3 of them have been published. So I'm shooting 50% right now. I guess that's not bad.
Right? That's good. These things take time,
They do. They take a long time. I started doing this, I don't know, close to 20 years ago. And, I was still working my day job at that time. And, just kind of slug it out and see where it takes you. And we're here now. So, I can't complain. It's been fun.
That's good. Awesome.
Right.
Oh
Like
yeah.
they say, you can't rush perfection, so it takes time.
Well, it does, and you just got to keep doing it until you end up with one foot in the grave, and then it's probably that time to slow down. So we'll keep doing it until that happens.
Right.
Right.
Since this is kind of a talk about horror and that kind of stuff, I thought I'd bring up the grave thing, but I don't know.
Yeah, sure. We love that.
Yeah, you bring up whatever you want to bring up. We're just here to get to know more about you and hang out. So
That sounds good.
yeah.
So, have you always written more on the horror or true crime type of element,
Well,
or?
no, I mean most of my stuff's been kind of in the thriller genre,
Okay.
and the first two books were kind of international thrillers, so they were, had to do with stuff happening here and stuff happening in Europe, and some ties into history and that kind of stuff. But this one, the last one, Salvation of Henry Maxwell, took a different direction, and it's still a thriller, mystery, suspense, I guess, with a little bit of the horror genre in it, but it's not like the real horror stuff you folks have probably talked to authors about. It's generic in character, but I would classify it as a kind of a gothic, modern gothic book, and it's a real direct or indirect way of going for me, and I kind of like this way of getting away from the international thriller thing. So I'm kind of excited about going in this new direction.
Awesome.
Yeah, definitely get that. I was looking because I was checking out your page. It says that you're a member of the International Thriller Writers, and there's more on that, but I want to ask more about that. Like, what is the International Thriller Writers, and what exactly you guys do?
Well, ITW was formed, I don't know, probably 20 some odd years ago by a bunch of thriller writers. And you've probably heard of some of them like Lee Childs, Douglas Preston, Gail Lynn's. They've got a lot of well-known authors, very famous authors that started it. And I got involved in it about 7 or 8 years ago, I guess, and got involved going to their conventions and meeting the people and doing that kind of stuff. And it's been very beneficial to get that interaction and to make that network with those folks. But they call them thriller international writers, but like I said, the genre is kind of broad. It covers all kinds of aspects. It will cover your horror, your even fantasy, paranormal, that kind of stuff. But they're still all thrillers. There's something to want to get your heart beating, and so that fast paced, that kind of stuff. So it's been beneficial. When I was there a few years back, I was doing some editing for some of their new authors that would come in, and so I did that for a while, and also served on a few panels. But it's been very beneficial. And if anybody's thinking of going into that genre, it'd be something to look into, to think about joining, because it's a good organization.
That's very cool. Do you have like a favorite moment throughout being a member of that? Like, is there something that you really remember while being a part of that?
Oh, yeah, I think just going there and seeing these people walk around and say, "Hey, I know who he is. He's famous. He's written a lot of stuff." Last time I was there, they had who is it? J.R.R. Martin, is that his name? They did.
Yeah.
And he's sitting and gabbing to everybody, and he's wearing that funny looking hat, and
Oh yeah, George. Yeah, George R.R. Martin
George
for
George R.R.
yeah,
not
for
J.R.R.
Game of Thrones. Yeah,
Game of Thrones. So people
Game
like
of
that you
Thrones.
get to see, and you can talk to them and that kind of stuff. So it's really fun. They're very accessible. These people, and they really try to help other authors
that's cool.
bring their craft up and get exposure. So that's what's nice about the organization. I can't complain. It's been fun.
That sounds very cool.
That's great. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, and just through like looking about your about me section, because I really was intrigued. I also see that you are a co-editor on the Big Thrill magazine, and I was curious about that. Your experience and
well, yeah, that was I kind of mentioned that a little bit. I did that a few years back, 2 or 3 years back. What you do is some of the authors will send in their novels, and we would review them and write a critique on it, and so forth. And I did that for 1 or 2 years, but it gets people thinking that somebody is looking at it other than their intermediate group, and it's I think every month they put out a list of new releases that their member authors have put out, and so you get to be involved in that, and it's fun to see people do what they do, and so I can't I this year I finally, on Salvation of Henry Maxwell, mine went out finally to them, so somebody else was looking at it. So hopefully we'll see if I get any feedback on that.
That's awesome.
Sounds like a great.
Let's see. She sent me some information here. I thought this was fascinating. You have an academic foundation in architectural and civil engineering.
Yeah, I've got that was my career.
That was your day job, as you were saying.
My day job. Yeah, I have a BS in architectural engineering and an MS in civil engineering. So, I'm kind of I did that for a lot of years, and a lot of people ask me, well, how does an engineer start to do writing?
Yeah, right. Especially thriller.
Honestly,
novels.
I don't have an answer for that. I think it's just a desire to do something different, and I've always admired writers, and I've tried to learn from them, and that was part of the reason being involved in ITW. You learn from the best, and you try to continue getting better, and as time goes on, you hope you can still do that. So it's very beneficial, but the engineering actually has been a good thing for me in terms of some of my writing. I used to overwrite stuff with a lot of detail because we're detail oriented guys, and we've got the little pocket protector and the pins, and we're doing that kind of stuff. But I over detailed a lot of scenes, and I would get comment back that, hey, slow that down, take a lot of that out. And after I analyzed it, I said, yeah, you're right. Why am I doing that? Let the reader decide some of these details. Let them get it into their head with what you're actually trying to portray. So that was a learning experience for me. And I think my writing has gotten better because I don't try to be an engineer as much as I'd like to be an author when I'm doing the writing. So.
Right. And I really like what you said about leaving parts up to the reader for imagination. That's really cool.
Yeah, that's also another thing I've kind of learned is, I was always over describing people, again, the detail aspect of it, but, let the reader decide kind of what they look like a little bit. Just give them a little hint here and there, maybe by their mannerisms or that, or the way they walk or the way they talk or something, and let them figure out what that guy looks like, that character looks like. And I think that's because it's going to be in their mind. It's already left your mind. Let it be in their mind. See what they think those characters look like. So don't overdress them. Say they're red hair, blue eyed, fat cheeks. Let the author kind of get some of that stuff worked out.
Right.
Yeah. I think too, like when people come together and like talk about it, like it kind of also creates room for like more conversations, because then people can be like, okay, so this is like what you see and this is what I see, and they kind of get to go back and forth and understand each other, like how people come up with different things.
Right.
That's true, and every reader is going to see it different.
Mm.
If every reader saw it the same, then I'd say every reader is a robot, but it's nice to have
Right.
people need to make their own decisions, and it's fun to sometimes compare how these they read these scenes or read these characters.
Yeah, I agree.
Very true. Let's see. I was looking at some of this.
Yeah, me too. Been looking. I noticed too in the back. I can see the placement
She
for
says
the book.
she says that an insight into how Lindauer constructs his stories to elicit deep emotional responses from readers. Like what she says, like what happens when Scrooge channels Edgar Allan Poe. No,
Yeah.
like
Yeah, that's kind of you always hear, always say, well, you got to have some kind of comparison to something so people can grab onto that. And I kind of thought about that for a while. And, Henry Maxwell is kind of a Scrooge, but he's a curmudgeon. He's kind of a nasty man in his old age. And, but then you bring in the little bit of the Gothic horror from the 60s into it. And that's how Edgar Allan Poe got into it. And that's how Henry was born. He was born from those movies back in the 60s. I don't know if Samantha's old enough to remember those, probably not, but the old Vincent Price, everybody knows who he is, I think, don't you?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Well, I do, but I was born in the 70s. So,
he was still around then, but
yes, I know who he is.
Yeah, that's kind of the model for Henry. So, and if you've seen those old movies, I mean, they're great. They really are. They're fun to watch. Their escapism, perfect. Perfect escapism. So that's kind of how Henry was born, out of that era.
Nice. Okay. So, so what time period does this book take place?
Takes place in 2013.
Okay.
The reason it takes place in 2013 is I wanted Henry, when he was being a mega horror star back in the 60s, I thought he would probably be in his early 30s doing some of those films. And so do the math, coming 85 years later, it put it about 2012, 2013. And so that kind of set the date. I didn't want it to be today's date, because then he'd be in his 90s and maybe he'd be, half dead by then. But so that's how that set that stage. And it's working out fine. And it takes place in Los Angeles and Malibu. And I think you folks are in LA. Jennifer is anyway.
I was, but yes,
you're on the West Coast, put it that way.
I'm in Maine now, but yes,
you're in Maine. Okay, but you used to be.
Yes, I was in LA for a long time.
Okay,
yes.
So it takes place in that area where, the movie capital of the world, I guess. So anyway, that's kind of set the scene.
She's lived out there too.
Yeah,
Samantha's lived out there too, so she knows.
Right.
Malibu. Okay, Malibu's a really nice area too.
Yeah, a lot of rich, famous people.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, was there a particular reason why you chose that area? Just more so because of the movie, the whole he decided to still stay in that area even after?
Because that's where his career was, and he had and part of the, I guess you could say, one of the characters of the novel is not a person. It's kind of like, if you read some of the old Edgar Allan Poe stories, like House of Usher,
right?
The house was considered a character.
Okay, I got
So,
you.
and Henry's house is basically a character too, because it's really a mansion, but not a mansion. It's almost a castle, and it's in the hills of Malibu. So if you can kind of envision going up the Santa Monica Mountains, and
Oh
somewhere
yeah.
on a cliffy precipice is this castle, and
Nice.
and he's lived in it all his life because he liked living in a place that mimicked his day job of being a famous horror actor. And so that
Okay.
really sets the scene. So I think it's important that I had a scene that really mimicked him, and so that makes it unique. You wouldn't think about driving up there and seeing a castle on a cliff like you were in the far side of the Carpathians or something, but
Right.
especially in a place like California, Southern California. So anyway, it just adds to the character of things. So
Nice.
I think it's worked out.
Now, is he that type? I mean, since you put him as like kind of a Scrooge curmudgeonly type person, right? Like in my head, as I don't know if I was the reader, I would envision like this guy who, yeah, he's old. He's older now. He's probably retired. Probably doesn't do very many movies anymore. You know what I mean? Like maybe once in a while they'll dust him off. Kind of like they do some of the really old actors. They'll still every now and then pull them out and put them in a movie as like the old, person, or you know what I mean? Like,
no, he doesn't do that, because when he walked off the set of his last movie, he walked off of it because his wife was, died of supposedly a drug overdose back then, and so he's been grief stricken all these 40+ years.
Oh dang! So he hasn't worked because of that.
No, he walked out his career. He just gave up on his career.
Oh, that's
that, because he's got this tremendous grief, and he's finally at a point now when the book starts that he's saying, "Why have I lasted this long? I can't take it anymore." I mean, so he's ready to commit suicide.
I got you.
So that's kind of how the story starts.
Okay, I got you. Okay. I kind of like that, like how you named it the salvation of Henry Maxwell.
Yeah, it's not
salvation. At the beginning, like he starts,
It's not salvation in a religious aspect at all. It's a salvation.
No, yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Getting your goal, your final goal. So.
Right. Okay. I don't know if it was not even just necessarily. I was just thinking like, okay, something that saved his life. Didn't have to necessarily be like a religious thing or anything. Just like salvation could just be like at the beginning of the book. He's thinking, I just want this to end. I want to end it. I'm over this. I've lived on this life, so long, and I've been without my wife all these years, and he's just probably, just depressed and downtrodden in life, and it's just like wants to go. And then like, okay, something happens throughout the course of the book that creates this salvation, like something that saves him, from feeling that way, maybe, or I don't know.
I think you're hitting a nail right on the head there on that. His grief. I mean, the theme of the book is a 4-part theme, in my view. He starts with grief, and then he ends up getting a revelation. And because he's at that point, he's ready to commit suicide, wondering why he didn't do it years ago. And the revelation is he thinks he sees ghostly images of his wife in his garden, and that revises, gets him back to thinking, I can't commit suicide now. Something's going on here. And throughout the book, because of circumstances of being under a conservatorship by a woman attorney, and being watched and analyzed by a film professor from UCLA on his old movies, he starts to get a transformation after that reservation. I mean, he was a curmudgeon. We got that established, He was just a nasty guy, but the revelation and the young attorney kind of changed him. So he's going through a transformation period where he's actually starting to like people again. And then that leads on to his salvation, his goal that he's trying to reach for at the end. So it's a 4-part theme: grief, revelation, transformation, and salvation. And it kind of follows an arc, just kind of like a character arc. He kind of follows that arc, how he transforms and changes to the end of the book.
I like that. Yeah, I like that. I just picture him being like this certain way, even like even the house. Like, since he hasn't worked in all these years, and he's curmudgeonly, he probably bought that house way back then when it was still like wouldn't cost as much as it would now.
Yeah,
but actually, he might not have kept the property up that great.
Yeah. Well, actually, he's been in that house ever since he was doing the movies. And the house, to bring it into more of a Gothic feel, was built stone by stone by bringing stones across from the moors of England and rebuilding it. Kind of like they rebuilt London Bridge down in Lake Havasu.
Yeah.
And that really is a character, because it just gives you, when you walk into this place, you think you're walking into maybe Dracula's castle or something. It's very kind of hideous inside, cobwebby, and he hasn't taken care of it. Yeah, that's what I'm picturing. Yeah. So it's a mess. And the young woman attorney comes and she starts to change him on things. So reader will see all that. And I think they'll see how Maxwell changes as time goes on. But the house is really a part of the novel in terms of being a character, and it gives you that little creepiness that maybe the horror fans will like. And there are some other scenes in there that bring in a little bit of the grisly aspect of horror. There's some serial killings that happen, but they're all tied into Maxwell, and they're somewhat all tied into his films. So just kind of give you without trying to explode the plot here too much.
Without giving too much away. Yeah. Oh, that's really fascinating.
I know, I'm gonna have to go read it.
Well, I hope you do. I'd love that. I'd love people to read it.
I like.
Was there like? I was also thinking too. I definitely feel like me being younger. Like I would like to say I'm a little bit uncultured. So, what does curmudgeons mean?
What does what?
Curmudgeons.
Oh, curmudgeon. Just a old nasty guy, just devious, hates people. He's just somebody that you dislike because he doesn't have any empathy. He's hateful. He's just a ugly looking old guy that you don't want to be around. He's kind of like your ugly uncle or your at Thanksgiving, that's always going to be negative on everything you do. So yeah, he's just a nasty guy, cruel, and somebody you don't want to be around.
Do you know anything about Ebenezer Scrooge, Samantha?
Well,
Ebenezer Scrooge.
That sounds familiar, but
Christmas Carol.
Yeah,
have mercy.
Ebenezer was the same way. He was a distasteful guy who hated everybody, and wanted just to make money and just keep it to himself and not help society at all.
Penny pincher. Yeah.
Now Henry's not exactly like that. He does give to foundations and so forth, but he's just a nasty guy. Other than that.
Yeah, I mean, some would say it sounds like I live under a rock because I feel like a lot of things I'm like, I've heard of it. I couldn't tell you what it is.
You probably
Don't
heard
feel,
me use those words.
yeah, don't feel so bad. I had to go to the dictionary to see how to spell it. So you're not in the same. You're in the same boat.
I love it.
Yes. Oh, what I was gonna say is there's for your books, is there like direct sources of inspiration that you've used um throughout the writing process or just in general, like
Well, I just in this book in particular, I just remember those movies back then, and I remember as a kid going to them and eating a candy bar and sucking down a Coke and just having fun on a Saturday afternoon. So that kind of stuck with me. In the writing process, you never get it right, but I do like to do a lot of research in my books. I like to have some truthfulness and some fact. But there is a difference between fact and fiction, but there's no reason you can't blend them together. And so it's in the writing process, you sit down, I try to go through it. I try to get the plot kind of worked out somewhat, because every plot I've worked out always has a not a roadblock, but a fork in the road. Sometimes you go the wrong way and you have to find yourself in a hole, and you have to come back, get out of it, and then find the right way to go. But but sometimes those forks in the road bring out other subplots that you didn't think about. So that's helpful. And then it's just a matter of, starting a chapter, finishing it, starting another chapter, and then going through the process of, when you're done, rewriting it. You always have to rewrite, and maybe 2 or 3 rewrites before you feel like you've got it to a point that you like it. And I'm convinced, and I'm sure every author is too, you'll never get it perfect. It's impossible, but you'll get it as close to where you want it to be. And you could continue to try to keep massaging it to be better, but the difference you make at that point is probably not going to be nil. So just get it to a point that you're comfortable, and then make sure it's done as well as you can, without trying to keep rearranging the furniture in it. So you're done, and you should be fine. So it's a process. No question.
right. I know. I look back, like when I was younger, I really was into writing, and I actually have it in my phone. It was a book I had started writing, and thought a lot about like going back to it, because it's like I definitely think it's something that I'd like to do for fun, just whenever I can. But yeah, I look back and read it, and I'm like, sometimes I feel like I struggle with like having flows of creativity, but when I look at that, I'm like, I definitely was in a flow, because it's very interesting, like what I had written down. So I feel like I maybe one day we'll finish that.
Well, yeah, but when you put it away for a while and come back to it, usually you get some more inspiration, and you'll actually see things in there that might make sense at that point. So
Right.
that's fine to put it on a shelf for a month or two, or whatever it takes. And some authors have put manuscripts away for years and then come back to them. So it's just a process. You're thinking different, and you're seeing it in a different light. So just keep at it. That's all you can do, and you'll get there.
Right.
How long did it take you to write this particular book?
Probably 4 years. I'm not a fast writer, and I'm not one of those writers, some of those real famous guys that probably put one out every 6 months or something, or a year. They've got much more incentive to do that than I do. So I do it because I enjoy it, and I want to get it to a point that people actually read it and comment on it. So this one took about 4 years. Probably the other two took about 3 or 4 years also. So it's a process. And, if I was being paid $1 billion, I probably couldn't go any faster. So, just do it at your own pace.
Right.
So the $1 billion is never going to come my direction. So I guess we'll just leave it at that.
No, it doesn't necessarily have to be $1 billion. I mean,
yeah,
you just made a
couple million or something. I don't know. A nice advance. That'd be nice.
Yeah, but even if you just made like a good, comfortable living off
living, exactly. That would,
you know what I mean? Like even if you just made like a couple $100,000 a year or something. I mean, how much
that'd be comfortable? That'd be.
How much money do people really need in life?
Exactly.
To have a comfortable life. Some people just like want way more stuff. You know what I mean?
They do. You're
just accumulating stuff at the end of the day, and then when you leave this plane of existence, so to speak, where does all that stuff go? Now your family's fighting over it. Sorry, I don't know.
Very good point there. You know what? Yeah, we're so materialistic. It's crazy. You enjoy life. That's what it's all about. You only got one.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. So you're having fun doing what you do, and you love what you're doing, and that's all that matters. And if you start making a good amount of money out of it, and make a comfortable little like living out of it, then that's all that matters. I know some people just gotta live in that lifestyle where they're bringing in, a couple million a year or something like that. But does an actual average human being actually need that much money or need that many things in life? Not really.
Not really. Not really.
Just saying, if you're making as much as some small countries, I mean,
ask that question to Elon Musk or one of those guys. I mean, it's kind of
it's just too much at the end of the day.
It's ridiculous. It's totally ridiculous. So.
That's what I'm saying. And there's all these homeless people and starving people around the world that you could support financially, and still it would be a drop in the bucket for him.
Yeah,
it would be barely like a little tiny thing.
You wouldn't know it was missing.
Oh. Yeah, a curmudgeon. There you go, curmudgeon.
Very rich curmudgeons. Yeah,
very rich curmudgeons. But that's how they stay rich, right? They keep the money in their own pockets.
Yeah. Why? Because they're going to die like the rest of us. I don't see what the point is. I mean, they just. They just keep hoarding it and hoarding it. It's like, what's the point?
You're like, Elon, do you have any children?
Live forever. Yeah. It's just crazy.
I don't even know if he has any kids, to be honest with you.
I think he does. He does.
Okay.
And I think a couple of them are estranged from him. So I can see why they would be estranged.
That's all right. They're all going to fight over it when he dies.
They'll fight over it at the end. Yeah, exactly.
But crazy.
Supposedly he has either 11 or 12 kids.
I think that's true.
Anyway,
yeah,
that's crazy.
That's true.
I googled it.
That's too many people. That's too many people fighting over his stuff. But that's what I'm saying. Like when you've got a character, like Henry Maxwell, who, in his heyday, he was probably used to whatever, what I mean? Like back in the 60s, you got to think like how much money would he have made per picture? Like how big did his career go? So like I'm sure in the writing process, you got to think about all these different factors. Like how do I paint a picture of this character without, like you said, giving all these millions of pieces of description and this, that, and the other thing? Because you want, like you said, let the reader kind of have a little bit of an imagination with it, not go overly descriptive. So you got to think like how much money though, like would he have made for a picture? Like how long would his money have gone? I mean, he could have invested it. You know what I mean? There's a lot of things he could have done. Bought other properties that maybe increased in value and he sold them, or, you know what I mean? There's lots of ways that he could have made money to keep that going to where he wouldn't have needed to work ever again, even if he did it right.
Yeah, he was fleshing his character out back in the 60s. He was a villainous guy on screen. He was a guy that everybody hated, and he was he could have been a whatever, but
yeah,
he off screen he was a very nice guy, and he was a pussycat.
okay.
So it's kind of like, if you remember a little bit about Vincent Price, he was about the same way. So like I said, I modeled him after him, and but he was not. Yeah, he invested, but he lived in a very huge mansion, castle, or whatever, and but he did not. He was not an Elon Musk by any stretch of the imagination. He was a normal person in probably Hollywood back in that day, somewhat normal. I mean, but anyway, that's his character. But as time went on, he became nasty because he had reason to be nasty. He lost his most precious possession, is his wife. And
so he thought that she had committed suicide by an overdose.
He thought she had committed because she did have drug problems back then. And part of his revelation is he thought he saw her in the garden, and then he started to think about that time and started to remember some things, and then it hit him that she just didn't die of a drug overdose; she was murdered. So that gives him a direction to be following. 40 some odd years later, now he's a detective trying to figure this out at 85 years old.
Interesting. So kind of like he decided to take it upon himself to figure out what really happened to her.
Exactly. And that's one of the directions of the plot takes. And there's other areas in there that have to do with these films, which are tied in. So it's an intricate little mix of things going on. And the reader will find out what happens. So Samantha, you need to read that book.
Yes, I know, and I've heard that before of like people doing that in cases where they lose someone close to them, and they end up taking it upon their own hands to look into that because it doesn't get resolved. So
yeah, and I think his character, you'll see his character. He's not dementia oriented. He's not stupid by any means. He's fairly intelligent old guy, and you'll see how he actually, in his mind, follows these clues that he's gathering now to find out what happened way back then. So he's got some smarts to him, and the young woman attorney starts to help him change from being a curmudgeon to somebody who is actually can be likable. So there's a really good interconnection there between the two. It's a very character-driven novel with the folks that are in it, and you'll see how they all change. And there's some emotion to it. I mean, when I was writing it, I was getting a tear in my eye. I don't know if that anybody else will, but I think it's an emotional thriller, suspense, mystery, gothic romance. A mouthful.
I can definitely see where some of that would be very emotional, and especially depending on how you did the description, like how you worded it, and you know what I mean, how you conveyed the emotion. If you can pull like a reader in to the world, then you've done a good job. And then that would elicit the emotion to where then that reader, myself or whoever, would be like, I feel his pain. Exactly. I feel that loss of his wife and why it would have been so crippling and why it would have gone on for 40 years. Because most people would have I hate to say this, moved on, and eventually their heart would have possibly healed. I'm not saying they would ever fully get over the loss of that love, because, you know, that was their first spouse or their whatever, but eventually most people do move on and get remarried, or I'm not saying everybody, I'm just saying most people, it seems to be, you know.
That's true. He you know, there was, when I was doing the research on the psychology of all this, there's something, I can't remember what the name of it is, extended grief, something other. There's some kind of psychological term for it. And people can have it forever, but they can still function in life.
Right.
And some, like you said, some people can kind of get over it, but I don't think everybody gets over something
no
traumatic as that.
Right.
And he did function pretty well up to the point, like 3 years before the book takes place, he had an accident and was in a coma for 3 months. So that affected him quite a bit. So when he came out of that, then he started hallucinating and he started to get to be hateful and everything else. So there was a reason why he started to grasp back at this grief really seriously. And that's when he wanted to do the suicide thing. So anyway, you're right. You try to get over him, but yeah, I probably would never get over it. But you try to bury it somewhat if you could.
Yeah. I know that most people and human interaction, like, they don't want to be alone. Not everybody can be alone. Some, especially, and I hate to say this, like, I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter if it's male or female, but I know, like, certain people just can't be alone, regardless, you know, and so they need a significant other, even if it takes them a few years to eventually move on. You know what I mean? It just depends, like, you know, if they had young kids to raise, or this or that, or, you know what I mean? I guess there's a lot of different factors.
Yeah. He never, never had kids. So that was one
So
thing.
They never had kids.
Never
Okay,
had kids. And it was just a devastating blow to him. And I think the reader will see why it was so devastating as they continue on the book. But, after that accident, he was actually at a point that they were going to remove the conservatorship from him because he wasn't be able to, they thought he couldn't handle his affairs, but then he started to really regroup, and then he had the accident, and then that brought him back into it. So he just kind of bounced around up and down, and then the accident just kind of pushed him over the edge. So why he never got married, I just think it was, there are a lot of people I know that have lost their spouses early in it. I've got a friend that lost hers in 30 some odd years ago, and she's never been remarried. So who knows? Everybody's different.
Yeah, very true. Yeah. Very true.
I agree.
Yeah. My father, him and my stepmom both had spouses before that both passed away at young ages of kind of unnatural stuff. You know what I mean? You know, like cancer or something. You know what I mean, that took them young. Eventually, they moved on, but everybody's different in how they, But he also had young kids. Still in the house. So it's kind of like, just depends on the factors in life, But like, do you, in a book like this, especially with the age of the character, would you more than likely say that this would be like a standalone book? I mean, I don't know the ending, so I don't want you giving away the ending, but is this like a standalone type of book where you can't go on with a sequel, or?
If I love the character. I love writing about somebody who is that old, and that would make a great standalone idea. Unfortunately, this book didn't head that direction, but I just everybody reads these thrillers or horror stories or whatever, sci-fi. The characters are usually younger. I mean, that I read somewhere where most characters described are in their maybe 30s, which is probably an average.
Right.
So I thought maybe somebody older like this would be very interesting. And yeah, as a sequel, it'd be great if it was taken a different direction. Because I could definitely repeat this guy somewhere else. And but maybe
you could write about like a prequel. Like everybody does it now.
Before,
like before, like what happened like back then when this all first happened and it was fresh or something, or I don't know. There's different ways.
There's ways to get around it. There's ways to get around it. That's true.
Yeah.
And I know, everybody loves, publishers love sequels because you can get some people hooked on the first one. They'll read the next one and so forth. So there's a method to the madness there.
Right. I just know sometimes certain factors within the book can kind of impact that or affect it. You know what I mean? Like, that was my only thing was like, if could it be a sequel? I mean, number one, I don't know how you ended the book, so we don't want to give that away.
I'm not going to give that away.
So whether or not it could be a sequel involved. And number two, the age of the character. But there's always people like Angela Lansbury, you know what I mean, who did Murder, She Wrote. And she was I think the character was in their 70s or
exactly,
or somewhere in there, and she was still solving mysteries and like all this stuff, and like so you can't just count somebody out because of their age. I mean, because you got like grumpy old men, and they carried that on for a few movies, and like there's like a lot of things you can do with it.
You're right.
Dude, I don't like to just like I wouldn't want to just like limit myself. In other words,
no. That's a good point. Even maybe the young woman attorney could continue on in a different adventure. So that could be a side book right there. She's pretty much a secondary protagonist, I guess, in the book. So.
Okay, cool. See, so you can always do something with that too.
Oh yeah,
you could have multiple. You could have one on the wife before she died.
Yeah.
Oh, there's many things. Yeah, I know. Like it's crazy. The world today. You could do all kinds of different things.
Yeah, that's for sure.
I know. I was reading a review because I was looking at the book because, like I said, I do actually want to read it. So, but
it sounds really good.
Yes, it does. But I liked how the person put it for their review. It was like they put, wow, shades of a Vincent Price movie. What is going on at Maxwell Castle? Is Henry Maxwell hallucinating or is he haunted? And why, after all these years, is he looking into his beloved wife's supposed suicide? The story starts slowly but picks up velocity quickly. So quickly, it is impossible to put down. Lots of twists and turns as the king of movie gothic horror plays out his own story to the benefit or detriment of others.
Nice.
Yeah, there was some good reviews I got on the ARCs that people had a chance to read. The only mistake in that one was they said the wife had the suicide, but no, she did not commit suicide, but she died. So
right.
But yeah, that was a good review.
Right. All right. Well, can you please tell everyone where they can get your book, where they can buy it and find you?
Okay, they can get my book at any of the outlets like Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books A Million. Walmart, Target, all those places. And you can find more information on it at my website, which is www.leelindauer.com. And that's Lee with a Lindauer, one word. Lindauer is Linda, with a UER tacked onto it. So that's pretty easy to spell. Lindauer. So it's LeeLindauer.com. And it'll tell them more about the book. It'll tell them about some of the 2 ever previous books. And
awesome.
And then it'd be nice to sign up for my newsletter, and I'll keep them informed of future stuff and more on this book.
Awesome. And they can find you, I'm sure, on social media like Facebook, Instagram, that type of stuff.
Yeah, Facebook and Twitter occasionally, or whatever it's called now, X. But mainly Facebook, I think, is probably where it'd be the best place to find me.
They're all on the website.
Yes. Oh, good.
Well,
see, links to everything on his website.
I've been looking at his website.
There's the website right there. I don't
know see, there you go. Just go to and I'll post it also when I repost it. I'll go and post that. I'll put it in the tagline on the video.
I appreciate that.
The website. That way they can get access to everything.
Yeah.
And then, biggest thing is please share, like, subscribe, and follow. So go to the website. That's the big thing, LeeLindauer.com. Go to one of his book outlets, buy the book, check it out, read it, give a review.
And
give
I guarantee they'll enjoy it. I guarantee it. I'm biased, but I think they will enjoy it.
I want to go. I got to go check that out. I know that for sure. But we want to thank. Yes, right. We got to go get that.
No, I was like, do it, or Henry Maxwell will come after you.
Yeah.
Yes, don't make him. Don't make Henry Maxwell come after you.
Well, maybe in the beginning of the book you don't want him to come after you, but later on you say, I
could probably outrun him.
I don't know.
You don't want the curmudgeon to come after you.
Yeah, with his cane. He'll beat you with his cane. That's how I'm picturing him in his head. All right. All right. Well, we want to thank Lee Lindauer, author of The Salvation of Henry Maxwell, for being on the show today. We really appreciate you and everything that you do and put out into the world. So thank you so much for being on here today.
Thank you, Jen and Samantha. Been a pleasure, both of you guys.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right.
And we want to thank the ever lovely Samantha Bailey for being my co-host this evening. Shout out to the sultry songstress, Amy Bowman, for being at our awesome concert coverage of Korn in Southern California. So I'm excited for that one. I told her she better be putting up live footage because I haven't seen Korn in a few years. And if you don't know who that is, Lee, they're a band.
It sounds like a band.
And it's
Hopefully
Korn.
It's not a corny band. It's a good band.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for watching and or listening to this broadcast. We appreciate you. This is your hostess with Moses, Jennifer DeVoe Muse. Thank you for tuning in to Fear and Fascination, Horror, Sci-Fi, and Fantasy Unleashed. We'll be back next week with some more episodes of Wicked Entertaining, as well as Fear and Fascination. Till then, stay safe. Have a wonderful week. Bye.